All right. Umoya Ulight, Umoya Ubright. Welcome back to another episode of Sahel Thursdays on the Moya podcast. It's always such a privilege to have you guys, and thank you so much for supporting and wanting to learn the history of West Africa. I hope that you've shared the link to all with all your friends and family so that we can grow together. So last week we started and we built the foundation of the francophone countries. Obviously, you guys know we were colonized by the English, so we're starting to learn about the French, and obviously there's also the language barrier. But we did kind of lay down the foundation to what are the systems that they're running with, and we talked a bit about the coups and stuff. This week we thought we'd go into the three countries that are like trailblazing at the moment. We thought we'll go into Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. I don't know if we're going to start with the countries before we get into one that Thomas Sankara and that Ibrahim Mamkani. Actually, first, let me
Yes.
say hi to our guests. Good evening, Mama Kanyi.
Good evening, Ntsegi. Good evening, Moya. Good evening, Imaging Alkebulan. Good evening. I don't know what it is for Kumpugen. I think they're in daytime.
Good evening, Oladele. Nice to have you again.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Moya followers. Good evening, Moya subscribers. Let's subscribe. Let's get the numbers up for my young lady here. We need to grow together, guys. Good to be here again. Good to share knowledge. I'm looking forward to this.
So,
Yeah, me
I
too.
mean, we were saying that we don't know much about the West African countries. And in fact, Mama Kanye, if you can tell us even what Burkina Faso look like, because on the news, obviously, they only show us the poverty of these countries. So when we
Mm.
want to talk about them, people have this concept of like just poverty. Because even someone today was like, oh no, we can't be like Burkina Faso, they're so poor. So can you like tell us a little bit about what these places look like? Because you are quite well traveled.
Burkina Faso, yeah, I was there last year, July. I was there last year, July. The airport can be rebuilt. In fact, yeah, can be expanded. It was since I think left by the French, pretty small. I don't know what Blaise Compaoré could Thomas Sankara for in 1987, because he then held the helm since then, and I don't know what he has been doing if he did not build a new airport. Be that as it may. The city itself surprised me. I didn't think Ouagadougou was that big. I imagined, because I've been to Burundi, so I was thinking of Bujumbura. It's quite big. Ouagadougou is big. I think initially built for about 1.5 million people, somewhere there. So it's not a small city. Obviously, French colonization does not invest much into the country, we did say last week. So, yeah, lots of modernization is required. But I think as a Southern African, I was pleasantly surprised at what I could find in Ouagadougou. I mean, it's not it's not in the 19th century. It's somewhere a bridge of 20 and 20th, 21st century city. So it's not that bad at all. Nsiki. But I mean, we are settled obviously with issues of infrastructure, plumbing of the city, because the French and the Portuguese, for some reason, I don't know what they do with their plumbing systems. They are just not built. They were never built with the mind that these people will one day fight against us and eject us, and because they are more than us, they will come and live in this town, and the infrastructure will crumble. So I think, yeah, they are settled with infrastructure issues, plumbing all around the city. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. It's not that small a city. When you go out, we didn't drive too much out given the terrorist attacks. I think we drove out an hour 30, if not just under 2 hours. from Ouagadougou. Beautiful country, beautiful people, extremely welcoming. Yeah, I think, yeah, leave it at that.
All right, so let's jump straight into today's lesson. I think Oladele, can you give us some history on Niger? Who is Niger? You basically give us story time, because, like we say, we don't know much more than South Africa. So can we unpack and break everything down for us? Oladele, you need to unmute your mic,
Oh,
and Mama, can you
I
please mute
I
yours?
need to.
Yes.
Okay, apologies. I was getting too excited. Obviously, as Nigerian, sometimes with the French history, we never taught it, so we don't bother to look. And this is basically what we need to do. So for today's event, I had to go do some research, a little bit of history about Niger. Pre-colonial Niger, um, Niger spans from ancient times to the 19th century and includes various civilizations and empires. Evidence of human activity in Niger dates back to 60,000 years ago. So that's a long time ago. With rock carvings, pastoral communities emerging around 7,000 BCE, like my sister would say, before Common Era. The region was once fertile, supporting large settlements and cattle herding, until it became arid around 2,500 BCE. By the 5th century BCE, Niger was part of the trans-Saharan trade routes connecting West Africa empires to the Mediterranean. The introduction of camel into the third century facilitated more regular trades. Basically, they introduced cattle trade, cattle obviously carrying trade. Niger saw the rise and fall of empires such as the Songhai Empire, and which controlled parts of Niger in the 15th and 16th century. Archaeological findings suggest that iron smelting may have begun as early as 1500 BCE in eastern Niger, though this is still contentious. The Bureau culture existed from the 3rd century CE to the 13th century CE. It also played a significant role in the early history of West Africa. And that's just a brief intro, pre-colonial history of Niger from my little finding. Yeah. You want me to carry on? In terms of post-colonial history, should I go to the post-colonial? Yeah, okay. Obviously, Niger gained independence from France, the nemesis, on the 3rd of August 1960. For the first 14 years of its independence, Niger was run by a single party under the presidency of Hamani Diori, who led the PPN, the Progressive Party of Niger. A combination of devastating droughts, accusations of rampant corruption led to the military coup that overthrew Diori's regime. Lieutenant Colonel Saini Conte, a small group of military rulers, took over the country until 1987. Conte's death Conte was succeeded by his general. Let me see. Kinchi was actually killed by his chief of staff, who succeeded him basically in another coup. So just to sum it up, Niger, they've experienced a lot of political instability through the military rule since 1981. Obviously, based on what we're talking about today, the military rule instability is basically part of the hegemonic control. Obviously, once France is not happy, they tend to help regime change and basically change countries. Obviously, most Africans have gone through serious coups like this. So Niger is no exception, because basically, if a particular rule is not doing the bidding, what the hegemonic powers is actually get in there and change rulers so that they can basically assert control over these countries. And this is basically what Niger, as of 2025, what Niger is basically is kicked the French out of the country. And this is basically why we're here today, to actually discuss which way forward for these regions. Do we go back to democracy, or do we stick to the military? Is that the way forward? So that's basically what's led to this discussion. But in terms of the history of all Africa, to be honest, is basically about instability by hegemonic controls and the leaders doing the bidding to serve the imperialist powers. If we don't do the bidding, they get rid of our leaders, and this is basically why we are here today. So Niger, we're talking about Niger, we're talking about Mali, we're talking about Burkina Faso. What they're doing right now is being an exception to the rule, and basically saying to the West, so do you lot, we need to take control of our trajectory, and that's why we're here today.
Thank you. And do you know what minerals are in contention there? Because obviously the French are not there just for nothing. Oh, please unmute.
One of the biggest minerals there right now is uranium. That is the biggest one that France wants to lay hands on. Obviously, France has, basically, I was reading, before I came on, I was actually reading. France had the most nuclear reactors in the world. They have the most, and they get the uranium directly from Niger. Make that sink in. They have the most nuclear reactors in the world. But where did they get their uranium from? From Niger. And then they tell us that East African countries are poor. So for France to succeed, to be the best, they had to suppress the resources or get the resources from other countries. Yeah, that's the key point there. I will go back to that in a bit, but that's basically the main resource that France is contending. That's basically why they don't want to let go. Thank you.
So that's it. It's the nuclear. Yeah. Mama, can you tell us about Mali and what's happening in Mali, the history of Mali, and where we are now politically and what it means?
Thank you, Ntsigi. Mali pre-colonially was a thriving empire established around early 1200s and came to its demise around the 1600s. You should remember that France, Portugal, Spain have been here from around the 1400s, joined by the other European powers. Mali was known for its gold even pre-colonially. It was a very vast empire. It started on the Atlantic west coast, and it stretched all the way into the savannah. When we say the savannah, remember, there is a North Africa with the Sahara Desert. Then you have this Sahel region, which is a belt that separates the desert from us, the rich savannas, where we have rainfall and not if we are not desert. So it stretched all the way. Mali was huge. And even their buildings, it hosts one of our earliest universities, the University of Timbuktu. They were known for their buildings, I think, which Mali still epitomizes today. They were also known for their cultural and learning prowess. They were cultural and education center pre-colonially. They were colonized by France. They got Islam had already got into them. Let's not forget that part. Islam landed here in 639. So by the time Mali flourishes as a pre-colonial empire in 1200, they already by and large Muslim. They got their so-called independence from France in 1960. And actually, until around 2008, they were always cited as a shining example of stability in Africa and as a country that was doing well, peaceful, but France had not left. Don't fool yourself. We talked about this last week. So the French deferred troops were still there. Why? What happened around 2008? Because you cannot analyze Mali outside of two terrorist, fundamentalist, jihadist organizations called Al Qaeda and ISIS. What gave rise to Al Qaeda and ISIS? I don't want us to lose sight of that. If Gaddafi was not killed, Al Qaeda would not have had a strong foothold through Mali, through Niger, through Burkina Faso, because when Gaddafi died, the Tuareg people who are semi-nomadic, who were they are also found in Libya, they are found in Niger, they are found in Burkina Faso, they are found in Algeria. So when Gaddafi was killed, they had weapons at their disposal. Remember, when a regime falls, armories, it depends who's there first before the others. So some armories are stolen. So they stole the armories from Gaddafi, so they were armed. So they then started fighting in Mali for a separatist state. Why did I drag ISIS into it? Because the invasion of Iraq, based on a lie by George Bush that they were weapons of mass destruction, also created ISIS. And also the regime change tactics of America in Syria, wanting to depose a legitimately elected government because they want to install a puppet, also gave rise to ISIS. So through Iraq into Syria, we get ISIS. And both groups and Al Qaeda, we have now pockets of them operating in Africa, even in northern Mozambique, we have ISIS. So that's what happened to disturb the so-called tranquility of Mali. So I have structured my research around the colonel, the current leader who has couped, Colonel Goita. I know that most people know Captain Traore. May we please know Colonel Goita of Mali. He is said to have couped in 2021 May. He was born in 1983, grew up in the military. He went through the military academy route. In 2008, he was deployed as the leader of the counter-insurgency in northern Mali because the Tuaregs operated in northern Mali. They were also committing human trafficking. They were armed groups. They were taking villages. He quickly distinguished himself and was known for his bravery against the Tuareg rebels. The crisis which brought him to coup. It's said that the crisis in Mali is more a crisis. They call it ethnicity. I call it nation groups because I don't know what is an ethnic group. I think we were all nations just downgraded into ethnicities so we can be chiseled into these false nations. I mean, if you take Abatswana, for example, you can't call them an ethnic group because Baruping, Batlaping, Barolong, Bakwena, etc. Those are the ethnicities. Batswana a nation. So, yeah, it's said that it is these nationalities' dissatisfaction that really plunged Mali into this crisis in 2008. Again, I say, what would have led to the nationalities' dissatisfaction? If you took the French, the Germans, and the English today and you formed them into a country, and you said to them, Zulu will be a unifying language, are they going to stop being German, being French, being English? They will not. So we need to concede that we are artificially created countries, and that does give rise to the so-called tribalism. I call it the question of unresolved nationalities. So the Tuaregs have never been satisfied since 1960. I did say they're found across Niger, Mali, Algeria, and Libya. In Mali, they constitute only 10% of the population, but they wanted to secede. They wanted to carve out a land of their own. So they led to a conflict between 63 and 64, and again between 90 and 1996, and again in 2006, and again in 2012. And this is where we meet Colonel Goita in 2008, already deployed to fight because it was rising in the north. It is said that the Tuaregs had been hardened by their combat experience in Libya, and they had weapons, as I said. So they wanted to form a state called the Azawad state. and they formed an organization called the MNLA, under which they fought the central government for cessation. So what then happened is that they attacked until they got to the capital. They overthrew the leader, and especially in the northern part, they took the north, so to say. When they did that, they gave rise to Al Qaeda and ISIS. Because remember, while they are not sure if we shouldn't call them terrorist organizations, I mean, they attacked villages, but not as Al Qaeda and ISIS in terms of being an international group. When they did that in that coup of 2012, they opened a gap for these two groups to come in. So when these two groups came in, they captured Gao, which is one of the big cities in the north. When these two groups came in, they then declared war on all foreign arsenals. They declared war on the government. So we see Colonel Goita then deployed to fight them, and his strategy winning. The French also came in, and I mean, the French were protecting their interests. I know you asked Oladele, what is in Mali? What were the French protecting? Mali is the third largest gold producer in Africa. The uranium mines that Oladele talked about in Niger, they are close to the border of Mali. So any disturbance in Mali or any civil uprising or civil protest threatens to spill over to Niger, because I mean, they are both controlled by France. So those uranium mines are closer to their border. It is said that before the coup of 2023 in Niger, 50% of the raw material that is used in the French nuclear power plants came from those uranium mines. So that's how the history of both then interact with one another. So the UN also came in 2013 through something called MINUSNA. Short, it was a UN peacekeeping force deployed there for protection of civilians and to restore order. I want to come back to the term peacekeeping at the end of this, so I stay in the flow. That was in April 2013. They had 17,000 personnel. In 2015, the Tuaregs agreed to a peace treaty in Algiers, but they broke that peace treaty. I mean, they have never stuck to it, and the government has never been able to enforce it. So by July 2020, there was a citizen uprising started in the capital, and it really spread throughout Mali. People were dissatisfied with how the central government was handling the issue of the Tuareg rebels, but also of ISIS and Al Qaeda, these terrorists that had now seeped into the country. So again, let's remember, we are talking neoliberalism, neocolonialism, because had it not been for what America had done in Libya, in Iraq, in Syria, we would not be having these people that we are now incurring as Africans. So in August 2020, Colonel Goita instituted a coup. France and the West threatened sanctions, ECOWAS threatened invasion, but Colonel Goita and the military were themselves not satisfied with what MINUSCA was doing to assist in quelling this rebellion and protecting the citizens. They were saying they're protecting, but also the French troops weren't helping much. That was their qualm. But they appointed a government of two civilians, the president and the prime minister. So Colonel Goita became the deputy prime minister. They were tasked with holding elections within 18 months and to reform the constitution. What happened after this 2020 coup is that Colonel Goita, because they distinguished themselves, I mean, everybody knew this was the go-to person. He commanded authority. He knew, at hindsight, he knew where Mali should be going, but he also knew security and defense. So in that impasse, the foreign powers that were dealing with Mali didn't go to the president, who was a civilian. They actually came to him. That rose a power struggle, so to say, between him and the civilian president. But it is said that he was very clear that until the armed rebellion is quelled in Mali, we can't even begin to talk economics or peace, because you cannot have economics and peace when we are under attack from within. He also, the researchers say, was very non-negotiable on the fact that the military government cannot be there to stay. It has to transition to civilian rule, contrary to what we are told that he wants to stay. So in May 2021, the president that they had helped come to power through the coup, while he became a deputy president, announced a reshuffling of the cabinet and took him out and the other military rulers. We can already just think who could have been behind that doing. So on the 25th of May, they could, and then they announced that the president had not followed the agreed upon interim constitution of the time, because as deputy president, he should have been contacted, but also he was tasked specifically with government appointments. So it was not the president's place to reshuffle and exclude them. So when the president and that minister were under capture, they both resigned, which then catapulted him into power. Again, we get the condemnation of the West. France now didn't threaten sanctions, they sanctioned, and they also announced that they are going to withdraw French troops that were assisting to quell the terrorist attacks. And I think, being Goita, I would have just been shocked that this thing has been going on from around 2008. Like, there's been the UN, there's been you, France, but nothing has been happening. So when we are threatening to withdraw your troops, like, exactly what I'm threatening, it's over 10 years now that this thing has been going on. So Colonel Goita then made an announcement and said France was inciting the neighbors to take a hard line against Mali. That would have been Burkina Faso, Chad, the Sahel countries. At that time, France, through its foreign minister, issued derogatory remarks against the military government, and Goita was not going to play that game to be a boy of France. So in January 2022, he expelled the French ambassador to Mali. And in February 2022, France announced that it's pulling out its troops, which was very welcomed by the colonel. The UN and Europe joined and condemned Mali, because Mali at the time, with France gone, wanting to bolster its defense force, because let's not fool ourselves, there is no language that the West understands. I said it last week. I tell you this as a guerrilla, I tell you this as a retired admiral. There's no language multinational cooperations and their Western governments understand except the military language. The weaker you are militarily, the more they talk to you, not with you. So Colonel Goita was forced to look somewhere to strengthen his defense force. And I mean, the writing is on the wall. He could have looked either at China or Russia. He looked at Russia. The Wagner group came in, the same Wagner group that assisted Central African Republic, by the way. After, again, years of France being there and the UN being there telling us they're helping to quell the rebels, but the fighting is going on, the Wagner group was there, and in 3 or 4 months, they quelled that thing. I mean, yeah, they are still pockets in the outlying areas of the capital. So the same thing happened here. The Wagner group came, and he moved closer to Russia in terms of discussing economics and the way forward. And France and the West denounced that. He has instituted in his time, this very short time, 2 fundamental achievements for me. One was the investment in solar energy. I always say when I talk about this, it shows that we don't do, and I talked about it even last week in our introduction, Africans are not involved in agenda setting. We are always in the agenda set by our former colonizers and their transnational corporations, who want nothing but to reap profit from us, because we are the continent of sunshine. However, was there no investment in solar energy in Africa? Why was electricity the primary source instead of the solar energy and electricity being the secondary one, especially for us, like in winter times? So I credit him for revolutionizing this and understanding that in Mali it is so hot, you can see by the people's skin color, the amount of melanin is just quadrupled compared to most of us. So solar energy will thrive. He has prioritized that. He's also prioritized revolutionizing and strengthening the defense force, which is crucial. Because, as I say, and as he has said repeatedly, you cannot have economic prosperity and peace without a strong defense force, because they'll just attack you. They'll do what they did to Gaddafi, kill a sitting president in broad daylight. What they did to Saddam Hussein, kill a sitting president in broad daylight. What America has done in the whole of South America. Now they are crying and they're saying, oh, we have a migrant crisis. America has meddled in South America and destroyed democracy since time immemorial. So those people are now living under juntas. Economic development is weak. They will run to where they see the development, because we cannot be an island of wealth in an ocean of poverty. So I think for me, for Mali, I'll leave it at this. Colonel Goita, South Africans, please let us know his name as we know Captain Traore.
Yes, and we do want to get into Captain Traore. Ghana, Mali, that's where the first university ever, because I want to emphasize this point, in the entire world. So Institutes of Higher Learning started in Africa, guys. I think it was Timbuktu, and I forgot the other university. But that's where the Europeans stole the concept of universities. Should we go into the Burkina Faso? Because we were worried that...
Quickly before you go, Timbuktu is Mali.
Ah, really? So Timbuktu is the African name?
So Timbuktu, the university was in Mali, so is the town. That's why when I shared their thriving history from 1200 to around 1600, I did say they also hosted one of our major universities, the University of Timbuktu.
Yes. I don't know who wants to get into Burkina Faso between the two of you. Do you want to start, Oladele, and then Mama Kanye will come in?
And then Mama Kanye, she can crown it up. So let me start.
Okay, Mam Kanye, you are our leader.
Oladele,
okay.
I want to come in with the Sankara years. Can you take the period before? Did you get to that?
Okay. Where do you want to go? So, okay, I'll let you do that, and then I'll go to the achievements of. Can we do that? I will go to the achievements of Traore. If you want to do the. Give me a second.
No, that's fine. Fine. So Burkina Faso, I think, like Mali, like Niger, is a former French colony. And again, France never left. Its defense force was there. The cultural center was there. Fast forward until 83, when Sankara comes into the picture, takes power through a coup, and revolutionizes Burkina Faso. He is credited for being the first African leader to realize, and he wasn't there for long, remember, 83 to 87, because he was assassinated through Blaise Compaoré in 87 in October. He saw the scourge of HIV/AIDS coming as a pandemic, and he actually said, this is one of the security threats against Africa, not just Burkina Faso. 2, he reduced infant mortality when he took, through the coup, infant mortality set at 20-point-something%, he reduced it to 14%. He is also credited for revolutionizing agriculture. He is known for what was called the green nurseries, planting of trees, but also green nurseries in terms of plant your own food. Do not rely on the food that is provided through transnational companies. Sankara is also known for revolutionizing infrastructure and the railroad so that there's no disconnect between Wakaduku and the rural areas, which the colonial powers did not care about. We know they concentrated on the capital and how things could be exited to Europe. So he recognized that. He's also credited for realizing the role of women and for revolutionizing women equality. He's also known for reducing illiteracy rate. It is said when he took by coup, it was sitting at 90%. And it became one of the projects. Sankara was just like, we cannot. It's the 20th century. We have to fight to raise literacy levels. Sankara was killed because, he also expelled the French, pretty much like the three leaders of the Sahel are now doing. So the French were never happy, and they did find a willing house nigger through Blaise Compaoré. He was shot in cold blood while in parliamentary session, actually. His body, it is said, was riddled with bullets at the back. The intention was to kill. And then he was in a meeting, by the way, and everyone else who had attended the meeting was also shot. And there was one survivor. I think he's the person that details. We all know, fast forward to 2017 and to recently, when Blaise Compaoré was taken out of power, and there are things that have surfaced and come out that the French Secret Service is implicated in the killing of Thomas Sankara. And we know that the French Secret Service would not have worked alone. They are always in cahoots with the CIA, with the British, the MI6, and the rest. Blaise Compaoré then took power. Sadly, that when you're a house nigger, you're truly a house nigger. He reversed almost everything that Sankara did. It's almost like Sankara's name became a swear word. People weren't allowed to refer to him, to refer to the achievements. He even moved the seat of government to about an hour away from Wakaduku. But I say, for me, that's the cowardice of a house nigger. He didn't trust that people would not get to him if the seat of government was still within Wakaduku. He did nothing. I actually went to the place where Captain Thomas Sankara was shot. May he not rest. People normally say, may he rest in peace. In African spirituality, we refuse that nonsense. May he not rest until Burkina Faso is totally delivered from the clutches of French control and the terrorists or fundamentalists, Islam fundamentalists. So I went to the place. It was lying in waste because Blaise Compaoré did not want to uphold that legacy. And it is only now under Captain Traoré that they are installing a, what do we call them, a memorial in his honor. But for now, truly, it's just nothing. It's the place where he held the meeting. Not even, it's not a rich, I'm looking for an English word. It's not opulence. Sankara was not about opulence. So even the offices he was using as government were not opulent. So you'll see the day you get a chance to go, again, Oladele, I know you guys want to go. It was really a simple government building, which Blaise Compaoré allowed to lie in waste. So yeah, that's the Thomas Sankara legacy. So I think it's safe to say that the three leaders of the Sahel are upholding the Sankara memory. And they've decided to come together because into what is called in English the CSS, Confederation of the Sahel States, led by Colonel Goita, by the way. That's why I'm saying we should know him. He's the leader of the CSS, not Captain Traoré, because he's higher rank. He's a colonel. So they've decided to come together to uphold that legacy, because truly what he achieved in 4 years is what some democracies like Ghana since 1957 have not achieved. We haven't achieved what Sankara achieved in the last 30 years of the so-called democracy. And he's lambasted that it was a military government, but he achieved so much. So I think I'll leave it there and allow my brother Oladele to come in. Just before he comes in, one of the things I forgot to mention that Colonel Goita has done in Mali, he downgraded the French language as the official language into it's a language, it's a working language. So it's a language we use for work. It's not an official language because, I mean, we have our own languages. Thank you, Nsigi. I'll give over to my brother Oladele.
Just to follow up on terms of Sankara, obviously they had an interim leader in Burkina Faso, Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba was the interim leader, and obviously it was dethroned by Ibrahim Traore in 2023. April 2023. That's basically when Traore came into power. Traore came into power not because he wanted to, but he was chosen by a group of people to come into power. So that tells you that it wasn't on his own. There was people around him who chose him to come in power. Basically, it was planned. So when they're talking about a coup, it wasn't a coup as the Western people think it is. It's just the fact that people around him chose, you know what? We have a task. We have to uphold the legacy of Sankara. So you are going to be the leader. Obviously, he has some qualities that looked upon that brought him to become an elder at the age of 33. He's 36 now. So that's basically how Traore came into power. What I'm going to emphasize on is he's been in power for 2 years, just 2 years. In as much as we're trying to focus on all three of them, but obviously, Mama K is talking about Goita. The Niger president has only been there about a year, so there's not much to talk about at the moment. It's not that we've been listening, but there's not much there at the moment, but they're still doing stuff which we're going to talk about. But in terms of Traore, he's been in power for 2 years. Burkina Faso's GDP has grown from approximately 18.8 billion to 22.1 billion in 2 years. He has rejected loans from the hegemonic powers, the IMF, the World Banks. He said, I don't want those loans. He's reduced the salaries of his ministers by 30% and increased salaries of the civil servants by 50%. So, yeah. He paid off Burkina Faso's local debts, basically completely paid off. He has established 2 tomato factory processing plants, the first ever in Burkina Faso. In 2023, he inaugurated the state-of-the-art mine to enhance local processing capabilities. He stopped the exports of unrefined Burkina Faso gold because obviously he established Burkina Faso's gold refinery. So instead of it taking out the resources, now it's adding value from home to go outwards, which is basically what every African country should be doing. He obviously, like I said, he stopped the exports of unrefined gold. Yeah, I've talked about that. He built the Burkina Faso's second cotton processing plant. So when we're talking about industrialization, this guy is creating more work for the people to empower themselves. He also opened the first ever national support center for artisanal cotton processing to assist local cotton farmers. He banned the wearing of the British legal wigs and gowns. I posted this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, where they use a local fabric to basically create their own judicial gowns. That was brilliant. So I love that. He prioritized agriculture by distributing over 400 tractors and 239 tillers, 710 motor pumps, and 740 motorcycles to the local stakeholders. So when we're talking about achievements, instead of them buying limousine, the best state-of-the-art cars, basically what they're buying is tractors and tillers and pumps to ensure there's food security in Burkina Faso. What he also did, he provides seeds, to the farmers. And he's talking about seeds, not GMO seeds, but proper seeds. So increase the agricultural outputs. Tomato production in Burkina Faso increased from 315,000 metric tons in 2022 to 360,000 metric tons in 2024. Millet production rose from 907,000 metric tons in 2022 to 1.1 million metric tons in 2024. Rice production increased from 280,000 metric tons in 2022 to 326,000 metric tons in 2024. He also banned French military operations in Burkina Faso. He banned the French media outlet, which good riddance. He also expelled the French troops from Burkina Faso. At the moment, his government is constructing new roads. They're widening existing ones and upgrading gravel roads to paved surfaces. He is building a new airport, which is expected to be completed in 2025 with the capacity to handle over 1 million passengers annually. That was just done in 2 years. What else can I say?
Yes, sis, that's amazing. You know, it's so wild because we were listening to Mam Kanye talking about Sankara and the legacy. I didn't realize that he was only in power for 3 years. So that's
Yeah.
quite powerful. So now I saw a question here in the questions, but you kind of answered it about how the three countries now formed an alliance. Maybe we go into Colonel Goita again and how this alliance came about.
Thank you, Nsegi. And another thing I found about Burkina Faso before we go there is that they are revolutionizing the time spent in jail by prisoners by skilling them. So, for instance, prisoners, that was just in one area, because it's not talking about all the prisons in the country. Produced 50 tons of wheat from just one location, that, as I say, just one area. It speaks to food security, but it speaks to skilling. One of the prisoners was interviewed, a young man under 45 years, and he said that he appreciates the fact that the government realizes that they are young, that they will get out of prison, and that there is life beyond prison. So they are getting a skill by being involved in agriculture. And that prisoner also said, apart from us being skilled, we are actually also just making amends for what we did because we are providing food security for the nation. Let's get to the Confederation of Sahel States. First, I think I want to take my hat off for the Niger leader, who is a brigadier general, Chiani. You know, a colonel is a lower rank to that of a brigadier general. It speaks volumes for me where you see a brigadier general allowing a colonel to lead. And I think which is why he does not use his military title a lot in Mali. Rather, he uses the title of being president of the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland. I think for me, you see there that the intention truly is to bring stability, to bring peace, so you can have prosperity for our people. They came together firstly because, remember, they have been threatened on several occasions with invasion by ECOWAS. They are sidelined. There are 54 countries in Africa. These are 3 countries. It means 51 countries have not pronounced because they are scared of their puppet masters. 51 countries have not announced embracing these leaders who have done more than all our leaders put together have done under democracy in the short spaces of time that they've been in power. So for me, I second it. I think I also second it because, Ntsigi, you know, yes, white people came with guns and gunpowder to fight us. But it's very rare where you don't find what we call in South Africa wars of resistance by each nation group as they were trying to fight colonialism. I'm just thinking, had we come together to fight as one force, maybe it would have been better. I mean, it wasn't possible maybe for the whole of Africa at the time, But I mean, countries that share a related history, Niger, Nigeria, you know, the Sahel, for instance, could have come together and they were facing one common enemy, the French. So for me, I recognize the fact that they know that they have a common enemy, the French, they have a common enemy, the Islamic terrorists and fundamentalists. And these are not wars. We should not call them wars. This is an insurgency. It's terrorist attacks. Because in war, you know who's your enemy. They don't know who the enemy is. The enemy eats with them, and then at night it rises and attacks them. So the enemy is using guerrilla warfare, but it's also using asymmetric war. Asymmetric war is difficult because it's not a declared war. You don't know when the enemy will hit with what. It doesn't mean if they burn the village, their next attack will be burning a village. Their next attack could be shooting at a bus full of school children, you know. So they understand that and they know that they need one another, which for me says a lot about Africans, because unity has been our curse as African people. We scarcely unite for the goodwill of our people. So I think that's what I would say about the Confederation of the Sahel States. The French uses a different name. I'm looking for it. I know I wrote it somewhere. It's IES in AES in French, but it means the same thing. Yeah, the abbreviation is AES. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for the Confederation. They also understand that they need a common defense pact. You know, if we don't understand why defense pacts are important, we should look at what happened to Iraq under Saddam Hussein. The US asked the UN for the right to invade Iraq. It was denied. And the UN still invaded Iraq without UN sanctioning, based on a lie that there are weapons of mass destruction, which we all know in hindsight were never found and they were never there. And they knew even going to the attack that they are not there, it was an excuse. But did the British not join them in Iraq? Because these are agreements under NATO. It's a pact. That's why the West always agrees with one another on something. That's why they were all funding Ukraine, because they want Ukraine as a NATO member. Because if Ukraine joins NATO, they are then can deploy their nuclear arsenals and weapons at the doorstep of Russia. So defense pacts are very important. I don't know of any other African country that is a defense pact with any other African country. That shows you how much we are still colonized. These are the first. This is a revolution. These are the first African countries to go into a defense pact with one another. If you attack Niger, you are attacking Burkina Faso and Mali. If you attack Mali, you are attacking Niger and Burkina Faso. It is groundbreaking. I love it.
And as we start to wrap up now, we come to the question of, were the military coups necessary? Was that the only way that it could have happened? Oladele, let's start with you there.
What I'm going to go with, actually, doing a little bit of research, there are two types of coups in Africa. You have the anti-imperialists and you have the opportunists. Okay, I have about how many? I've got a few leaders here. So Ibrahim Traoré was an anti-imperialist, basically. He came in to expel the French military occupation. He came in to take over his resources. He liberated the western regions of the country from terrorists, and obviously he carried on the legacy of Thomas Sankara. That is an anti-imperialist leader. Obviously, we talked about Assimi Goïta. He's the same thing. Kicked out the French, banned all the complicit NGOs, changed the official French language to African languages, and obviously, like Mama Kanye said, obviously he's built the first solar power plants in Mali, and also reclaimed gold worth about 254 million. I talked about this last week from the mining companies who were trying to keep the money but didn't want to pay no taxes. So that's another anti-imperialist leader. Then we've got Abdurrahman Tiani. Obviously, he came in at July 2003. Also, same reasons, just like the other two. Anti-imperialist, French, getting rid of the French occupation, getting rid of the AFRICOM Center in Niger, expelled those who were trying to control the Iranian mines, so he got rid of them. He reduced the healthcare charges by 50% and made childcare free for people. And obviously, another legacy of Thomas Sankara. So, like Mama Kay said, basically they follow the Sankara blueprint. Then you got the opportunists. We heard about the coup that happened in Guinea, 2021. You got Mamadi Doumbouya. Okay, he came in, but basically, what has he done? He's basically carried on the assimilation of the French, basically being the house Negro, like we said. So I'm not going to say too much about that. Another opportunist was in Chad as well. We have Mamat Dabi, same thing. He carried on with the same opportunistic. Basically, he came in basically to protect the interests of the hegemonic powers. I wouldn't say too much about him. And then we have the one in Sudan as well, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Same thing. It was close to deposed Omar al-Bashir, but also an opportunist. He saw the opportunity and he came in basically to further buttress the hegemonic powers. And then, don't forget, in Gabon, we saw a coup in Gabon and we thought, oh yeah, because the three happened, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso happened, we think, oh, there's another one, but we got excited for a bit. But also, France was reading the room. They were looking what's going on. They said, oh, if we don't get rid of this guy, something might happen. So they quickly, what did they do? They quickly got another coup, just to fortify themselves, and brought this guy, Brice Oligui Nguema. So he came in 2023. I got excited, but as soon as I saw what was going on, I think, oh, this is another opportunity coup. So, like I said, those are two forms of coups there: the anti-imperialist and the opportunist. So in Africa, when you see coups, look at who's behind it and where's it for. Once you understand how the politics play, then you can actually quickly know how it came about. So what we need more in Africa today is the anti-imperialist coups to get rid of the hegemonic powers. This is basically where the rest of the 51 countries should go. I'm not advocating for violence, but in any means necessary, like Malcolm X said, we need to free Africa. Mama K.
Thank you, my brother Oladile. Yeah, I've separated for myself into a reactionary coup and a progressive coup. Blaise Compaore's coup was a reactionary coup. It was still a coup. But Blaise Compaore, after he assassinated actually, because he was a man of stature, a patriot, and a president of a country. After assassinating Captain Sankara, amongst the very first thing Blaise Compaore did was to return Burkina Faso to the IMF and the World Bank to borrow money. And I mean, I looked at the airport when I landed and I asked myself, he borrowed that money to do what exactly? Can he tell us 10 things he did with all the borrowing since he killed that patriot in 1987 until about recently when he was ousted? So for me, a progressive coup is an anti-imperialist coup. A progressive coup is a coup that espouses decoloniality. A progressive coup is an anti-neoliberal coup. A progressive coup is a coup that looks at the situation and say, we can't go on as usual. We've been doing this for the last 30 years. Surely we need something different. I mean, if you've been doing something for 30 years and it's not yielding results, why would you continue doing it? Even for business sense, it doesn't make sense. Let's look at Niger. Brigadier General Chiani. Did he have a choice? If 50% of the raw material that goes into nuclear plants in France came from Niger, you think France is going to let Niger go? Are you really deluded to think that France is going to allow a government through democratic rule in Niger to take power and to ensure that those mines are benefiting local people and that France pays adequate tax for the uranium it's extracting in Niger, that France will actually even stop extracting and let the people be the ones who extract and they buy. It is their raw mineral. You truly think that if 50% of the raw material that went into the nuclear arsenals in France, building and constructing and maintaining, came from Niger, France is truly going to turn a blind eye with all the money that France has, ripping it out of its colonies and continuing to make African colonies pay civilization tax and keeping their foreign reserves. France is going to let a democratic government just take power to a revolution. For those who say there was another way, you truly believe that in Mali, with the gold reserves, they are number 3 in Africa, and they have other minerals. You truly think France was going to let Mali go? I mean, these are it's France's cash cow. Remember the quotation we read last week from Jacques Chirac? It is Africa that's keeping France afloat, because other places where France has colonized, somewhere, somehow, those people in Asia or wherever are shaking the cloak off. You remember, we are the ones who truly still remained as colonized. That's why I said there's a fundamental difference between independence and liberation. Africa is independent. That's why we even have independence days. Independence we are given. That's why we're given by our former colonizers. Even those who fought like us, at the end of the day, you were given through the Codesa talks. Zimbabwe was given through the Lancaster talks. So independence we are given, but not liberation. And liberation is about a revolution. It's about decoloniality and anti-neoliberalism and anti-imperialism. You truly believe France was going to just let these 3 countries go and just do what? Twiddle its thumb. Because if these countries go, takes a big chunk out of France's economy. So for me, there was no other way. These coups had to come, but I'm happy that they're progressive coups. It's not coups that are inviting France back. It's not coups that are elevating the French language. It is not coups that are allowing transnational corporations to continue underpaying workers and reaping profits and dodging taxes like it's happening in our countries. So for me, these are not reactionary coups. They're progressive coups, which every self-respecting African should be embracing. It says a lot about our government, starting with ours in South Africa. The fact that we were a guerrilla liberation movement, which became the ANC, which I was never part of, by the way. I ended my journey with the ANC as a guerrilla, not when they became a political party, because through the Codesa talks, I could just see that this thing is going nowhere. Now, for a guerrilla movement not to understand the difference between a progressive coup and a reactionary coup tells you that the puppeteer masters in South Africa are in charge, not government. And that goes for all our countries, actually, the 51, because there are 54, and all 51 have not embraced, because the EU has not embraced, America has not embraced, the UN has not embraced. The transnational corporations are angry for being kicked out of there, and if they are coming in, they are made to obey the constitution and do things according to the law. Because all of those people have not embraced, we cannot embrace, because we are just but puppets as 54 African states in a chess game.
Hectic. In fact, this week I saw the Ghanaian president went to go see Le Captain. So I don't know if he's going there on behalf of being black or on behalf of the white people. But I did see that that development. Thank you to all the comments in the comment section and all our teachers in there as well. We do see you. I see you're saying that we should invite Franklin Nyamsi. And if you can, please email me his details because you obviously know who that is. That will be most helpful. Are there any closing parting shots, Oladele?
Okay, my parting shots, like I reflected last week, the Sahel trio are setting the pace for the change that Africa needs. We Africans need to do some work, and the work that needs to be done is basically led by Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. The 51 African colonies that are left behind, they need to embrace the change. Because for us to get to where we need to get to, we need to do what we need to do. And part of that is to cut the umbilical cord of the imperialists away from Africa. As long as we are linked to the imperialist governments, Africa will never progress. They basically, the survival is down to the suppression of African countries, because Without our resources, without our minerals, they can never be wealthy. So for those who want to keep being part of the imperial system, basically, I'll say you're a house Negro. We need more field Negroes like the Sahel trio to push Africa forward. I'm Nigerian. I'm not proud of the kind of government we have because I could see what's going on. Basically, yeah, I could see it's a house Negro. So we need basically all 51 African countries to basically, you know what? You're not going to do what's not been done. They set the pace in motion for you. All you got to do is embrace them and just follow the blueprints. Just look at what they're doing. For Africa to be free, we need to be completely free. We basically need to get rid of the impunity of the imperialists from our continent. We're not free. Basically, our curriculum, religion, everything that we embrace in 51 in all the countries are all imperial, neo-colonial. Africans, we have work to do. Let's stop being lazy. Let's do the needful for the sake and the legacy and for the future generations to come. I'll end on that.
Thank you so much, Oladele. For me, I'm taking from a conference I attended about 3 weeks ago in Kenya, organized by Femnet, Akina Mama, and Action Aid, a African feminist conference. And the theme of the conference was reimagining and then reimaging an African feminist post-neoliberal Africa. We can't continue moaning about what neoliberalism is doing. We all know, or neocolonialism. But can we even imagine a Africa outside of neoliberalism or neocolonialism? And these three countries have reimaged and reimagined it. For them, it is through military coups. For you, it could be through something else. The fact that for you, South Africa military coup will not work because you have kept a white elite which is armed to the teeth, by the way, while you black people are not armed. You are just dancing to a mapiano and drinking yourself to a stupor. They are armed, they practice shooting over weekends, they own the land, they are organized. So if for you the coup does not work, please do not lord it over the Confederation of Sahel States and say it shouldn't work for them too. For them, that's how they re-imaged a post-liberal and post-colonial Confederation of Sahel States. Find yours. Instead of pointing fingers, find yours. What's the South African reimaging and reimagined post-neoliberal and post-neocolonial South Africa? How will it look like? Who's the center vehicle that should drive us? For the Confederation of Sahel States, it's their defense forces that are driving them there. Because of France having built weak government institutions by continued interference. We didn't say that, my brother Oladele. So the defense force emerged as the sole organized institution. So let it drive, because the governments have proved to be inefficient and weak. They are bought by France, they are threatened by France. So let the military vehicle be the driver to their post-neoliberal society. What is the driver for us in Tsigi? What's the driver for Nigeria? My brother Oladele, what's the driver for Eswatini? What's the driver for Botswana? What are the drivers for you guys? They've pointed theirs out. And they are creating, by the way, I know we are refusing to accept it. They are creating a post-neoliberal and a post-neocolonial society where they are, starting with the French language. It's not happening for us. So for me, that would be my parting shot.
Oh, there is just one more. There is one more question. Yes, my question to our panel is: can we achieve freedom in Africa with democratically elected governments, or must we all have military coups?
I think I've just answered that. Maybe the question came as I was talking. I've just answered it. It depends on the situation in your region. For the Sahel, as I say, France has interfered and taken control so much. I mean, imagine if your foreign reserves, your foreign is kept in Paris, and we are paying billions annually for civilization tax. Your people are living in abject poverty, but you're enriching France. And because the government has proved to be weak in terms of capacity, it's the defense force that emerges as a solid institution. It is not the same for us. Our defense force and employment bureau, we all know that. So for them, the defense force is almost always via the military academy. It is professional, which is why you see Captain Traore Even Captain Sankara had not done it. Colonel Goiter hasn't done it. They have not proclaimed themselves four-star generals. So is General Chiami. They have not taken power and proclaimed themselves the ultimate rank in the military because they are very professional. They are professional soldiers. They know that you achieve these ranks through experience, through training. You get promoted to these ranks. You don't promote yourself. So for them, they've realized the solid institution that's coming out of this chaos is the defense force. This is the only institution we can use that is professional. What's the institution for us? I asked the question. For South Africa, could it be the defense force? I doubt it, having served there and having been a guerrilla. What other way would South Africa be? That would need South Africans to creatively come together and think. What's our way out of neoliberalism and neo-colonialism? Remembering that we have they say 13% and we contest that number a lot. They say that 13% whites, I contest that number. I think there's far few, but that's okay. Let's work with the 13% that we are giving officially. Remembering that we have a 13% white people whom we can't touch. Each time we think or breathe of touching them, not touching them, think and breathe. The West jumps. Trump jumped recently with the land issue. So for us, what would be our way out? We need to be starting to think creatively. What's the way out for Eswatini? What's the way out for Botswana? These questions might not be the same. My daughter always say, can we stop treating Africa as a country like racists do? Africa is a continent of over 1 billion people. It does have regional differences, like the Sahel. I've just outlined them. What are the regional differences we have in the South? Maybe Oladele should say, what are the ones they have in the West? Maybe that should lead to further podcasts on this issue. But yeah, I think that's how I would answer that question. Because you can't say we should all go military because some defense forces in this continent, honestly, a security section of 10 people, would disorganize that defense force. Some defense forces in this continent are so weak. I mean, it's just, you can't even call it a defense force.
And also, I'll say, we're talking about democracy. We defined this last week. What is democracy, to be honest? Power for the people, to the people, by the people. But sincerely, is the power with the people? Democracy is controlled by the hegemonic powers, probably the 5% or 1%. It's a corporatocracy. Basically, we do not control power. Democracy is controlled by the rich people, the corporate entities across the world. So for me, is democracy is the way? Is that the way for Africa? Is that the way we want to go? Because if you haven't control of if you haven't got control, and it's not rested in Ubuntu, which is I am because you are because I am. Community-based power. If that's not happening, then that's not democracy. So I'll leave that there, guys.
Thank you so much. This brings us to a close of Sahel Thursdays. Thank you to everybody who joined in. Thank you to our teachers. Oladel, your mic gives us a bit of a feedback there. Can you just mute it? Thank you. Thank you so much to all our teachers in the comment section. Lion Champion, I will try and get hold of these people. I hope they do speak English because I don't speak French. And thank you once again. Obviously, we did mention it last week that these sessions are were Dr. Kanyi's sessions to come and teach us. And Oladele and I are privileged enough to have been welcomed along on the journey of this. So next week, Thursday, we'll be back here, same time, same place, to unpack these politics furthermore. Please remember to subscribe to the Moya podcast and the Emerging Kabilalan. And obviously, please, can you guys keep rooting for Mam Kanyi to be the president of the MK? I'll see you guys again next week.